You made it to the Go Commando Show with Fred Galvin. On our new mission, we contend with the naked truths of health, leadership, and overcoming adversity. Now it's time to Go Commando.
Good afternoon, sir. It's such a pleasure to have you provide some comments for the Go Commando Show, and we appreciate everything that you have done, not just for our Marines, but for so many who have served in the front lines for America overseas.
Well, Major, I will say that anyone that's worn the uniform that's fought for this country is a hero in my book. And so for me to have a chance to talk with you and to be interviewed by you is very special for me.
Thank you very much, sir. One of the first things that I know of your character in knowing you for 10 years is your faith in God. And would you please speak about the importance of your faith both in your personal and in your professional life as a member of Congress?
Well, Major, I have always been a man of faith, but I think that my mistake as a member of Congress to vote with President Bush to send our troops to Iraq renewed my faith. I went to the funeral of Sergeant Michael Bitts. He was a Marine stationed at Camp Lejeune, which is in the district that I represent. And I sat with his wife, Janina Bitts, at his funeral. That probably touched my heart as much as anything in my life. It made me realize that I had disappointed my Lord and Savior, because when I cast that vote, I never believed that the war in Iraq was necessary, and yet I was not strong enough to vote my conscience. I went to all the hearings. We had Secretary Rumsfeld, we had Condoleezza Rice, we had Vice President Cheney, we had Colin Powell, all these people coming to a bipartisan hearing prior to going into Iraq. I mean, members from both parties sitting in the Armed Services Committee from all different walks of life and listening to their justification for war. And I never believed that it was justified, never did. So I cast a vote to give President Bush the authority to go in with the hopes that he would not go to war. And yet when I sat there with the wife of Sergeant Michael Bitts down at Camp Lejeune where the services were being held, I felt the pain of not doing what my Lord and Savior wanted me to do. So for the many years since that funeral, as you know, I've signed well over 11,000 letters to families and extended families. That was my penance in making a mistake that cost young men and women their lives.
Yes. And you have those photos of those from your district as well as outside your district there in eastern North Carolina who have fallen since this conflict. And we are just now starting our 17th year last month. We're going into our 17th year that we've spent over 7,000 lives, unfortunately, and the equivalent of almost 10% of our budget. And pre-war, in the year 2000, we had a national debt of $5 trillion, and now it's gone up 400% to $20 trillion. Right. And you've been a member of Congress for 23 years, and as you mentioned, you know, those thoughts that weigh heavily on your head that we're starting this 17th year in combat. What are your thoughts as far as when we do go to war? And speaking from a member of the House Armed Services Committee, what should that result be when we declare war and send our troops in?
Well, Major Galvin, I kind of feel like Ron Paul. I believe in a strong military. Where I think America's made the biggest mistakes have been our foreign policy as it related to going to war without a declaration of war. As you know, we've had no declaration of war since World War II. In fact, the AUMF, Authorization of Military Force, in 2001 was to go into Afghanistan. In 2002, with George Bush being the president, was our authorization of military force. The acronym is AUMF. For me personally, we continue to let the presidents, not only George Bush, but Obama, and now Trump, they all want to continue to expand the role of our military based on the 2001 and 2002 AUMFs. And here we are using 2001 as an example. To your point, we're 16 years been in Afghanistan. I have joined my colleagues in both parties of saying it's time to have another debate on whether we should be in Afghanistan or should we come home. The former Commandant of the Marine Corps, Chuck Krulak, the 31st Commandant, has been my unofficial advisor on Afghanistan. If I might take just a moment, I wrote to President Trump on July the 18th asking him to encourage Congress to have a new debate. I want to read 2 or 3 things very quickly. Sir, I'm writing to you today because you seem to have changed your heart on the issue of staying in Afghanistan. I'll use 2 out of 4 examples that I gave him, but let me read these very quickly. In 2012, you referred to Afghanistan as a complete waste and declared it was time to come home. The next year, you said on Twitter, do not allow our very stupid leaders to sign a deal that keeps us in Afghanistan through 2024 with all costs by USA. And fourth, you also tweeted that year, let's get out of Afghanistan. Our troops are being killed by the Afghanis we train, and we waste billions there. Nonsense. Rebuild the United States of America. Last point. Mr. President, I agree with those remarks, and so does the 31st Commandant of the Marine Corps, my friend and unofficial advisor, General Chuck Krulak. As he said in a recent email to me, no one has ever conquered Afghanistan, and many have tried. We will join the list of nations that have tried and failed. My frustration here in Congress is we can't even get a debate. Major Galvin, we've been 16 years in Afghanistan, headed towards 17 years, and we can't even debate whether we should be there or not be there. That, to me, is a violation of the constitutional right of all members of Congress who take the oath to defend the Constitution.
And as you mentioned, these words that our current President Trump has mentioned on his campaign trail as promises and what he said we as a nation should do very boldly. One thing I've known over the past 10 years, as you've been involved in our case with the Marine Raiders, is you have been very strong in regards to the integrity and accountability of individuals and organizations that say one thing and do another, and it seems very hypocritical. One of the things that I see as a business owner now is when we spend resources, whether in the case in the military, it's human lives, and in billions, it's come up to trillions of dollars. USA Today just had an article this past week talking about how they're going to now lower their standards again and allow people to enter that have self-mutilation, that, again, just like in Bo Bergdahl's case, that have known psychological issues. But I feel that there is a significant cost when we prolong a war that has so many people, and then a lot of people don't want to go serve in a combat zone, especially when they see now that we're not able to win. Our generals have been telling us for years and years, and the current general over there said typical counterinsurgency, it lasts 14 years now we're entering our 17th year, and President Trump wanted to withdraw, and now he doesn't. And as a senior member of the House Armed Services Committee, how critical is it for our military readiness to be when we, over these past 16 years, have had Russia reemerge, China develop both economically and militarily, North Korea and Iran developed nuclear weapons while we were fighting farmers in many cases and insurgents in Iraq and Afghanistan and Syria. How important is that readiness of our military to be able to respond to true crises?
Well, Major, to your point, and you have served and fought for this country, you know better than I, but I do know this as a policymaker, meaning myself. You can't keep wearing out your military.
Yes.
Because you never will catch up.
Right.
To give them the rest and rebuild the military, because you're wearing them out. You're wearing out the equipment. And so to me, what I would love to see is America rebuilding and having a strong military, but a smart foreign policy. And to your point of Afghanistan, that's not a smart policy. We have continued to, again, don't want to keep using General Kulak, but I never will forget that he has said to me many times that you're not going to change Afghanistan no matter what you do. Afghanistan is a graveyard of empires. And I would tell you, when you look at, and you've already mentioned this, the waste and fraud and abuse in Afghanistan is unbelievable. The Inspector General for Afghan Reconstruction is John Sopko. Anybody watching this show can go on their website. It's SIGAR, S-I-G-A-R, Special Inspector General for Afghan Reconstruction. They will see the same reports that I get every 3 or 4 months when he and his team go over there. You probably know this, certainly many of those watching your show. DOD spent $6 million to buy 9 goats. They bought 9 goats from Italy to bring them into Western Afghanistan to start goat farms. Well, they can't even find the goats. That's $6 million. One other story, there's so many stories, but just one other story. The Department of Defense signed a $50 million with a British firm to train Afghans to be intel officers. The British firm that received $50 million took their money and bought 7 luxury cars. 3 of the luxury cars, Bentley, Aston Martin, and a very fancy Porsche, and 4 other luxury cars. In addition, with the taxpayers' $50 million, they also paid the wives of the top 3 executives $400,000 each, and the wives did nothing for the money. There's so much waste, fraud, and abuse, and yet we continue to do it. And as you said earlier, our country is going broke. We're over $20 trillion in debt. And going back to Bill Clinton, President of the United States, when he left office in 2000, our debt was $5.6 trillion. We have more than tripled the debt of this country. And it's both parties. It's both parties. But yet people want to keep spending money. And the sad thing is, this December, we will have what's called a debt ceiling debate to raise the debt ceiling, because we cannot, as a nation, pay for the bills we've accumulated if we don't raise the debt ceiling so we can sell more assets and borrow more money to pay last year's bills. You cannot do that. You as a family, you can't do that as a business. You can do it, but not for long. Right. But that's the way we operate in Washington.
And part of it, I believe, is in the Civil War, you had lawyers, doctors, politicians, business owners that were commissioned, and they were fighting. There was a cost in the Civil War and World War II. Right now, Americans are not always aware of what here on the show, they're able to hear it from a member of Congress who's a member of the House Armed Services Committee, because when I tell them that I show a lot of reports that this is, our leaders are saying we need to train, and that's our exit strategy, and people think that sounds good, and it briefs good, but the fact of the matter is, whether it's Syria, and we spend millions of dollars in years training folks in Iraq and in Syria and Afghanistan, and they lay down their arms, they're eager to, in many cases, not all, eager to surrender, give them our weapons, and it's a futile cost in most cases, as well as I'm disgraced and I've seen congressional delegations go overseas when I've been overseas, and some of these bigger bases where the 10th typewriter troops and the PowerPoint platoons, the rear echelon folks work at in Iraq and Afghanistan, they are eating steak and lobster. They are literally taking Zumba classes and taking college courses, and people think, well, those are good things, but it goes to show that, just like one of the charges that Bo Bergdahl was charged of, when you look at one of those definitions that, anyone who does not give their utmost, and that is a article in the Uniform Code of Military Justice, and I believe, our military leadership overall is not giving their utmost, and they're failing the American people, but the American people are not very aware of what's going on in this, as you mentioned, sir, the fraud, waste, and abuse of American lives and in our national treasure that we're squandering over there. Meanwhile, we have very serious threats, whether it's cyber attack, whether it's attacks against our electric grid with an electromagnetic pulse, or other nuclear threats. We've had Russia provide nuclear submarines to North Korea, and people, in often cases, are not aware of, here you have essentially a madman in charge of nuclear weapons that the CIA this summer declassified and released, said that they believe there's a nuclear capability within North Korea. And that should send shrills up everybody's spine. And we're horsing around with farmers. What would you say regarding the direction our current leadership in Washington, D.C. and the Pentagon should take with our national security?
Well, I've been working with John Garamendi, who's a congressman from California. We put a bill in probably 7 or 8 months ago because, again, both parties, members in both parties who agree with me on this Afghanistan, we've written to John Boehner, who's the former speaker, right. Now it's Paul Ryan, a total of 13 letters, and that's bipartisan. I've written 4 myself. But anyway, I'm part of the 13, just asking for a debate. So when Garamendi and I put this bill in, we would go to fellow colleagues and ask them to put their name on our bill and then vote against it if it got to the floor. That's how frustrated we are, because we cannot meet our constitutional responsibility of debating to send your son or your daughter to war. I don't know anymore. I mean, Vietnam was a very horrible time and a lot of anxiety by the leadership of the Johnson administration and the American people upset by you were a child at the time, but you remember those days. And yet now, because we don't have the draft, many people are concerned about soldiers dying and being severely wounded, but it's not the same because it probably is not their son or daughter that's in the military.
Right.
I think if you're going to change this country, the American people need to get involved and say to members of Congress, listen, I want you to understand that I'm sick and tired of taking care of the world, spending all this money and all these lives to take care of somebody else that lives 10,000 miles away. I mean, to me, I tell people, well, if you don't fight him there, you fight him here. Well, I don't buy that because I'm more concerned about jihadists being in Honduras than I am Afghanistan.
Yes. And it is, that aspect of jihadism is spreading around the world, but our current strategy that people say has changed, I'm here to tell you it hasn't changed, and we still have greater casualties. That's been documented both on the government side as well as in the media, that this summer of 2017, we're going to change our strategy. Nothing's changed. We're continuing to accelerate our loss of lives. And when we look at current spending, and whether it's human blood, the sons and daughters of America, or the funding, but let's also talk about those that go to the VA and have PTSD. That can become a lifetime need of medical, for mental and physical health care for these veterans when the situation on the ground, whether it's Afghanistan, Iraq, and now in Africa, is not getting any better. What do you recommend that citizens do to make their congressional representatives more aware of these issues, and how to bring this, as you mentioned, you want to debate, how should they contact their congressman or woman?
Well, there's you got Senator Rand Paul, you got Senator Kane, that's a Republican Democrat, pushing on that side with other senators to get a debate on the AUMF, Authorization of Military Force. And then you got myself we got 10 or 11 people very outspoken about Afghanistan and other parts of the Middle East. I think it's going to take the American people calling their member of Congress, House or Senate, and saying, listen, I'm sick and tired of being in Afghanistan. I want you as my senator. I want you as my congressman. The next time you get a chance to vote to have a debate on Afghanistan, I want you to push for a debate. That's the only way we're going to change this, truthfully. The American people have got to make these calls.
Yes.
Because, tonight you and I are doing this interview right now. We're showing a movie in the tourist center, which you can do, on War Machine, which is a satire on Afghanistan. You've been to Afghanistan.
Yes.
You know about it. I have not. But I know one thing about it is that we're wasting life and money, which you and I are talking about now.
Yes. And that's War Machine is not just a phrase, it's a movie starring Brad Pitt that is out there, released by Netflix, which folks can view on Netflix. And one final question, sir, is I was wanting to know the reason behind your advocacy and your defense of many of these causes that just seem like the one-offs. In our case is one of them with the 7 Marine special operators from the company that I commanded that were wrongfully accused in Afghanistan. But you also defended other frontline foot soldiers, such as these Green Berets in Niger, Africa, who were just recently ambushed and killed, and the rank and file, such as Lario Pantano, when he was a second lieutenant, and the cause of James Wyrick, who went to the defense for the rights of the presumption of innocence of Marines while they're under investigation, as well as the widows of the 2 Marine pilots who were flying an aircraft that was being pushed to the envelope and crashed in a night desert brownout condition landing in Arizona the year 2000. But those are not things that you have, and I'm not trying to toot your own horn, I'm just trying to talk about you as a man and a member of Congress who has differentiated yourself, that those aren't something that you toot for. You have defended our case for over 10 years, to including current House Resolution 21. And with these 2 widows, Tricia and Connie, of the pilots, you fought for 14 years to clear those pilots' names. They were flying an aircraft that wasn't fully operational capable at that time. It was found that some of these maintenance reports on the Osprey were not being truthfully told to the American public, because the push to get that aircraft into the operational forces, and that really came down on those 2 pilots' heads that were flying that aircraft that night, and it killed not only the Marines on board, but those pilots themselves. But you have been such a staunch defender, and what is it that's burdened your heart to fight for those causes and seek the relief of the burdens of those men and women that were fighting, and those widows?
Major, I think it's my faith that it's been God's will that whatever the purpose or the cause might be. Connie Gruber was her husband. Brooks Gruber was a co-pilot. The pilot's wife, John Brow, Trish lives over in Maryland. Connie lives in my district. Connie wrote me a letter in 2002. I did not know her. And in the letter, she said, if you're a man of integrity, you must help clear the names of my husband and the pilot, John Brow. So that started that journey. Then one night listening to the radio, Larry Pantano's mother, Mary, got on. And here we are in 2005, 2006, fighting in Iraq and Afghanistan. And she felt that her son was unfairly being singled out because of action, that he was a young lieutenant.
Yes.
That she felt that he was unfairly pointed out, or singled out, I should have said. And I made a call after that to the attorney, Marine Phil Stackhouse, major at the time, and the other attorney was a civilian, Mr. Gettings, up here. I asked them both. I never met them. Is this Marine being treated fairly? They said, no, we really don't think so. And then I met you and Captain Noble because I read a comment by an Army general, Kearney, that singled out Morsot and said that Fox Company did not do what they should have done. And I resented that. I didn't know you. I didn't know any of you men at the time. But to me, how do you not give the benefit of the doubt to a soldier, a Marine in wartime?
Yes.
How do you not give the benefit of the doubt to the two pilots who were dead and could not defend themselves?
Yes.
So it all kind of, that's the journey God has put me on. And I believe sincerely that your situation, as well as everyone I've named, and forgotten a few actually, but I always felt like this was what God intended for me to do in this office, was to be there when somebody needed a voice.
Yes.
Quite frankly.
And it is a testament to your faith, because they have not been easy or quick, simple wins. I mean, but you understand from meeting with the widows of the Osprey helicopter that crashed that, the burden that they would have had to have endured for a lifetime, and that their children, would face, with that stigma. It's just like the Vietnam veterans who came home from war and were not welcome. And that's how, like in our case, with the Marine Special Operations, the 7 of us who were falsely accused, stemming from these allegations from these Army officers, as you'd mentioned, there was no connection. But when we heard your voice on the floor of the House of Representatives, we felt, there's not only a man of faith that is doing the right thing, but it really did embolden us, because no one in the military at all was standing up for our cause, and you championed it. But it's now been over 10 years, and you're fighting for this House Resolution 21.
We're going to win that battle for Fox Company and you and the 7 men, because I tell you the truth, to me, I see a simple right and wrong.
Yes.
It's not always simple, but that's the way I see it. And when men and sometimes women are in a war situation, they need to be given the benefit of the doubt.
Right.
I said that about the 2 pilots. They can't defend themselves. You are in a situation where you're called in a matter of seconds to take action.
Right. And
you've been trained, and I'm talking about Pantano as well. You've been trained, and you're going to do what is right. But then there are always those who are not in your shoes, in this case, boots,
yes.
That they can't put themselves there.
Right.
And you should be given the benefit of the doubt. And what the Army did to Fox Company was very unfair. And we're going to win that. We're going to. Yes. I hope it doesn't take 10 more years, because I'm not sure I'll still be here. But I know if it takes 10 more months, that we're going to get this thing done.
Yes. We truly not only are honored, but we appreciate your efforts, sir. And 2 of the things that I'd ask the viewers, as Congressman Jones has mentioned, it is easy to get in touch with your congressional representative by going to www.congress.gov, and on there you can search the contact information. You can easily get in touch with the phone number that puts you in touch with the representative for your district and address these two critical issues that we were speaking about here this afternoon. And the first being our lack of accountability in spending both lives and American treasure without the results. If we go to war, there needs to be a result, and it should not take going into 17 years the fact that it's only gotten worse and slipped into worse effects. The second is in the case of a House resolution which Congressman Jones has sponsored, and to be specific, it's H.RES.21, and you can web search that under the 115th Congress, which is what we're currently in, and they can look at that bill, and many representatives want to provide a response that they're not a member of the House Armed Services Committee, and they can currently take action by co-sponsoring it, which does not require any membership of the House Armed Services Committee. They can co-sponsor on this, and we have bipartisan support on that House resolution, as well as when it does go. The fact of the matter is there's two H.R. 21s. It's sometimes confusing. One was sponsored on the very same day of 3 January this year, and it was immediately the very next day approved and moved on to the Senate, where this current bill, it's going on for over 11 months and stuck in committee. And that's something that you, as the people of the United States, can, fight the cause. Contact your congressman or congresswoman today and urge them to sponsor this, and do not allow someone to say that this was a long time ago or that these Marines are fine, because I would not be speaking with Congressman Walter Jones here in Washington, D.C. if this did not have severe negative effects on Marines' ability to be employed when they were falsely accused of homicide. And this did go to trial, which ended in the declaration of non-legal terms, as in every case that's gone on. A military justice case ends in legal terms of guilty, not guilty, or dismissed. And ours, it was acted appropriately, which put the media on a path of me correcting the record to 65 media sources, because they were still attacking me all the way through and into my retirement, saying that we killed civilians. So we really appreciate your support. To all the viewers and listeners, thank you, and please contact your congressional representative, both in the case of the Marine Special Operations and fully clearing our names, as well as in the accountability. When we go to war, America should be the most lethal, the most ready, and taking care of our troops properly. And when it's not effective, as we've seen complete, incontrovertible evidence that what we're fighting in Afghanistan is not effective, demand that your congressional representative do something today and urge that it be done in a meaningful way. Thank you very much, and God bless you.
To all my fellow grunts out there who in your youth felt it was your duty to protect us, I salute you. And thanks to the listeners of the Go Commando Show who labor on the farm, who are sweating on the construction site, putting forth your very best at the office. You are making a difference. Support the Go Commando Show in our pursuit of bringing you the highest quality professionals. Infiltrate the website at gocommandoshow.com, where you can view all of the podcasts and arm your team with incredible deals on health supplements, commando clothing, and equipment. Every time that you get a good deal, it supports the show. What deals? When you purchase anything from the website, Amazon, healthcare supplements, you're covering our six. And to the ladies on the team, when you outfit yourself in the super sexy threads from Naked Zebra, and yes, I'm talking about in fuego, you are firing the sniper shot for our commandos. How else can you support? It's simple. you smash the follow and subscribe buttons on our social media. That is how you support us bringing great guests to talk about serious subjects, not the mainstream media's fake news. So thank you, and until our next show, stay in the attack and go Commando.